Assalamu alaikum. Today we will talk about the conditional get. The conditional get is a mechanism to verify that the objects are up to date. The object that a client has requested are up to date or not. The conditional get message is used when there is a cache server between the client and the origin server, and the cache server or the proxy server replies on behalf of your origin server. But when cache server replies, it has its own copy of the object and it replies from its own storage, but it needs to check if the object is up to date or not. So it requests the server, the origin server, for that object to see if the object has been modified since the last it stored the object to its storage. If the object is up to date, then it sends the object from its storage, and if the object has been modified, then the origin server sends a copy to the cache server, and then cache server sends the new version of the object to the client. So conditional get message is identified by this header. Now to check a conditional get message, first you need to open the tool, the Wireshark. And again select the interface and start capture. Then you need to open a link. We accessed a link, but in case of a proxy server, we need the first request is always responded by your origin server. So to check about the second request of the same object, you need to access the same object twice. We will see how it makes the difference. So to access the same object twice, or either you have to open a new one and a new tab and click the same address and then open it, or you can simply refresh this one and it will be reloaded. Okay, after clicking twice, stop the capture and then apply the HTTP filter. Okay, what happens whenever the request for an object is sent for the first time? For the first time, your cache doesn't have that object. So the first request is always the object is sent by your origin server. When the first response message reaches your proxy server, the proxy server sends the object to the client, and proxy server also saves that object to into its storage. Now, up-to-date check is not made on the first request. Up-to-date check is made on the second request. After some time, the same client or some other client asks for the same object. Now your proxy server has the object in its memory, but the proxy server needs to make an up-to-date check. It needs to check if the version of the object that it has is the latest version or not. So then when the request for the same object is made second time, then it makes the up-to-date check with the origin server. It asks the origin server if the object has been modified since its last accessed that object. Then your origin server check if the object has been modified or not. If the object is modified, it responds with the code 200 and OK and sends the new version of the file. And if the object has not been modified, and if the proxy server has the latest version, then your origin server responds with 300 code and it tells that object is not modified and your data portion of your response message is empty. Now this is the first request. If you remember, we discussed it already that conditional get is identified when there is a get method in the first line and there is if modified since header. Now the first request, as I said, the first request is always responded by your origin server because your proxy server does not have any information about that object because it's the first request. So we will see the details here now. This is the first get message and the response message. Now it is a conditional get because there is a proxy server involved. So when your origin server server respond, it also sends the last modified date. You can see here, we have discussed it already. It tells your cache server that the object has been modified, has last modified on this date and time. Now this information is saved at your proxy server. Now this is the second request. When the second request is sent, now first request does not have if modified since. Now second request, because now your proxy server has the information, has that object, but it needs to make the up-to-date check. So here if you can see, the request message has if modified since header. We discussed this header that request message will have if modified since, and your response message will have your response message will either provide the information with code 200 and OK if the object has been modified, or it will send 304 code and object is not modified, and the object will not be sent by the origin server, and object will be sent to the client via your proxy server. So in the first request there was no if modified since header, but in the second if modified since header was added, and the first response has the last modified information. The last modified information is sent, and your proxy server will keep this information to make the up-to-date check. If you can see here, last modified information was 10 July 2020 5:59:02. Now the second request has if modified since the same. See, 10 July 2020 5:59:02. The object hasn't been modified since, so the object was not sent. If the object is modified and object is sent, it will again send with 200 and OK here, 200 and OK, and this response message will have the date when it has been modified. The last modified wala header, it will also be added here. But since the object has not been modified, the modification date and time does not need to be modified, so information is not here. This is conditional get. Thank you.